Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, watching the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. Nexus Station looked like a giant metal flower floating in the darkness, its arms stretching out in all directions. Hundreds of alien ships moved around it like busy insects. "Sir, we're getting some interesting radio chatter," said Lieutenant Amy Turner from her communications post. She had been listening to alien broadcasts for the past hour. "They're talking about us." "Not in a good way," Jake nodded. He had expected this. The Vengeance was humanity's newest warship, but compared to the sleek alien vessels around them, it looked like a flying brick. Its gray metal hull was covered in weapon mounts and sensor arrays that stuck out at odd angles. While alien ships moved with smooth grace, the Vengeance rumbled forward on chemical rockets that left visible exhaust trails. "What are they saying?" Jake asked. Amy listened to her headset for a moment. "The Vextai are calling us the slow metal slug. The Korthak think we're barely evolved apes in a tin can, and the Zephyrians are wondering if we built our ship with stone tools." Captain Ryan Phillips, who commanded the ship under Jake's overall mission authority, shook his head. "Let them talk. We're here to do a job." The job was simple in theory but dangerous in practice. Earth had recently joined the Galactic Council, a group of alien species that controlled most of the galaxy. Humanity was the newest member and by far the weakest. The Council had called this meeting to discuss humanity's place in galactic society, which everyone knew was code for putting humans in their proper place at the bottom. "Incoming transmission from Nexus Station Control," reported Communications Officer Chris Matthews. His voice carried a slight tension that Jake noticed immediately. "Put it through," Jake said. The alien voice that filled the bridge sounded like metal scraping against stone. It belonged to a Korthak, one of the heavily armored warrior species that dominated the eastern spiral arm of the galaxy.
"Human vessel, you will dock at Bay 47. Do not deviate from the assigned approach vector."
"Any deviation will be considered hostile." "Friendly bunch," muttered Chief Engineer Katie Brooks from her station. She had been monitoring the ship's systems during their approach, making sure everything looked normal while secretly checking the modifications they had made during the journey. Jake opened a channel. "Nexus Control, this is Commander Morrison of the UES Vengeance. We acknowledge Bay 47. Beginning approach now." As they moved closer to the station, more alien ships came into view. The Vextai vessels looked like silver arrows, long and thin with no visible engines. They moved impossibly fast, appearing in one place and instantly showing up somewhere else. Their technology was so advanced that human scientists still couldn't figure out how. Their ships worked. The Korthak ships were the opposite. Massive floating fortresses covered in thick armor and bristling with weapons. Each one was 3 times the size of the Vengeance and looked like it could punch through a moon. They moved slowly but with obvious power, like armored titans walking across the battlefield. The Zephyrian vessels were the strangest of all. They seemed to be made of crystalline material that shifted colors as they moved. Energy weapons flickered along their hulls like lightning trapped in glass. Their ships were beautiful and deadly, representing technology that humans could barely understand. "Look at all those weapons," said Dr. Nicole Baker, the ship's science officer. She was studying the alien formations through her sensors. "I count over 300 ships total. That's enough firepower to glass a dozen planets." "They want us to see it," Jake realized. "This isn't just a diplomatic meeting. It's a show of force." Admiral Lisa Carter's voice crackled through the secure communication channel from Earth. The transmission had been tightly focused to avoid alien interception, but Jake knew they were probably listening anyway. "Morrison, you're walking into a nest of vipers. Our intelligence suggests the 3 major factions have been talking. They don't want humanity getting too comfortable in galactic society." Jake had suspected as much. Humans had several advantages that made the aliens nervous. Earth was located at a strategic crossroads between 3 major trade routes. Human space contained rare mineral deposits that were valuable for advanced technology. Most importantly, humans had shown an uncomfortable tendency to adapt and innovate quickly. "What are our orders if things go bad?" Jake asked quietly. "Survive," Carter replied, "and make sure they understand that humanity won't go quietly." The Vengeance settled into its assigned docking bay with a series of mechanical clanks that echoed through the hull. Alien ships nearby had docked silently, their advanced technology eliminating any sound or vibration. The contrast was obvious and intentional. "Airlock sealed," reported Katie Brooks. All systems showing normal. But sir, I'm picking up some interesting scanner beams. They're trying to get detailed readings on our ship. Let them look, Jake said. They'll see exactly what we want them to see. What the aliens would see was a primitive human warship with basic weapons and simple technology. They would detect the missile launchers, the railgun turrets, and the thick armor plating. They would note the chemical engines and the simple computer systems. Everything would confirm their belief that humans were far behind galactic standards. What they wouldn't see were the modifications Katie's engineering team had made during the journey. Hidden compartments contained experimental weapons. The ship's computers ran secret programs that could change the Vengeance's capabilities in seconds. Most importantly, the human crew had trained for scenarios that alien tactical computers had never considered. Sir, we're getting a formal invitation to the council chambers, Amy reported. The meeting starts in 2 hours. Jake nodded and turned to Ryan. Keep the ship ready, Captain. I have a feeling this diplomatic mission might end up being something else entirely. As Jake prepared to face the alien representatives, he thought about the long journey that had brought humanity to this point. Less than 50 years ago, humans had been alone in the universe. Now they sat at the table with species that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. The aliens expected humanity to be grateful for the opportunity and eager to please. They were about to learn that humans had very different ideas about their place in the galaxy. The council chambers stretched out like a vast amphitheater carved from black stone. Hundreds of alien representatives filled the tiered seating, their various forms creating a bizarre collection of shapes and colors. Jake Morrison walked across the central floor toward the human delegation's assigned seats, feeling thousands of eyes watching his every step. Ambassador Helen Rodriguez stood as Jake approached. She was a veteran diplomat who had spent years preparing for this moment, learning alien customs and languages. Her face showed the strain of the past few hours of preliminary meetings. How bad is it? Jake asked quietly as he took his seat. Worse than we expected, Helen replied. They're not even pretending this is a normal diplomatic session. The 3 major factions have been coordinating their talking points. They want humanity out of the inner systems and relocated to the frontier regions. The frontier regions were polite words for the galaxy's garbage dump, systems with dying stars, poisoned planets, and hostile alien life forms. It was where the council sent species that had fallen out of favor or proven too troublesome to deal with. A deep rumbling sound filled the chamber as the Korthak representative approached the central speaking platform. General Thok Varim was 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor plates that looked like black metal. His voice boomed across the chamber without any need for amplification. The human species has shown aggressive expansion tendencies, Thok Varim declared. In 50 standard years, they have established colonies on 47 worlds. This rapid spread threatens the stability of established trade routes and territorial agreements. Jake bit back his first response. Humans had expanded quickly, but only into empty systems that no one else wanted. The aliens had thousands of worlds each. 47 human colonies were barely a rounding error in galactic terms. The Vextai representative spoke next, though spoke wasn't quite accurate. Ambassador Zaylin communicated through rapid electronic pulses that were translated into audible speech by the chamber's systems. Her actual form was difficult to see clearly. Shimmering collection of energy patterns inside a humanoid containment field. Human technology shows concerning military applications, the translation announced. Their primitive kinetic weapons and chemical propulsion systems suggest a species focused on warfare rather than peaceful development. Such aggressive tendencies are incompatible with galactic civilization. Helen stood to respond, but the Zephyrian representative cut her off. High Counselor Velthara was perhaps the most beautiful and terrifying alien Jake had ever seen. Her crystalline body reflected light in patterns that hurt to look at directly, and her voice sounded like singing crystals. The human species lacks the cultural maturity necessary for advanced galactic citizenship, Velthara said. Their brief history is marked by constant conflict and resource depletion. They cannot be trusted with access to strategic systems or advanced technology. Jake felt his temper rising. The aliens were describing humanity like they were discussing a dangerous animal that needed to be caged. He caught Helen's warning look and forced himself to remain calm. Honored representatives, Helen said, finally getting a chance to speak. Humanity has followed all galactic laws and protocols since joining the Council. Our expansion has been into uninhabited systems, and our technology development has focused on peaceful applications. We seek only to contribute to galactic society as equal partners. A sound that might have been laughter came from the Korthak section. General Thokvarim's voice carried clear amusement. Equal partners? Your entire species has fewer warships than any single member of my battle fleet. Your technology is centuries behind galactic standards. You are children playing with toys and calling yourselves warriors. The chamber erupted in what Jake assumed was alien laughter. The sounds were disturbing. Electronic chittering from the Vextai, grinding metal sounds from the Korthak, and crystalline chiming from the Zephyrians. Representatives from dozens of smaller species joined in, clearly enjoying the humiliation of the newest council members. Jake's communicator buzzed with an encrypted message from Lieutenant Turner back on the Vengeance. He read it quickly, his expression growing grim. The message was short but alarming. Alien fleet movements detected near human colonies. Military formations, not civilian traffic. He showed the message to Helen, who paled as she read it. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental. While the aliens publicly humiliated humanity in the council chambers, their fleets were positioning themselves near human worlds. Perhaps, said a new voice from the chamber's upper tiers, we should allow the humans to demonstrate their capabilities. The speaker was Ambassador Keth Morian of the Hegemony, a smaller but influential faction known for their cruel sense of humor. His species looked like walking skeletons covered in pale, translucent skin. Their entertainment often involved watching other species fail at impossible tasks. An excellent suggestion, agreed General Thokvarim. Let the humans show us their military prowess. A simple war game between their finest vessel and a selection of our patrol ships. If they can demonstrate true competence, perhaps their concerns about relocation can be reconsidered. Jake felt the trap closing around them. The aliens were offering humanity a chance to prove themselves in combat, but it would be impossibly unfair. Any alien patrol ship was more advanced than the Vengeance. A selection of patrol ships would be a massacre, but refusing would be seen as cowardice and give the aliens excuse to immediately relocate humanity. The council would declare that humans had admitted their own inadequacy. Helen looked at Jake, her eyes asking the question she couldn't voice in the chamber. Jake thought about the modifications Katie Brooks had made to the Vengeance. He thought about the experimental weapons Dr. Baker had helped develop. Most importantly, he thought about the secret orders Admiral Carter had given him before leaving Earth. Humanity accepts the challenge, Jake announced, standing up from his seat. The UES Vengeance will engage whatever forces the Council deems appropriate. The chamber fell silent for a moment before exploding into excited chatter. The aliens were clearly delighted by this turn of events. They expected to watch humanity's humiliation in real time, broadcast across the galaxy as a warning to other species about the price of ambition. General Thokvarim's voice cut through the noise. Excellent. The exercise will take place in the Helix Nebula, where sensor interference will prevent any external assistance. 3 patrol squadrons will participate, 1 from each major faction. The engagement will begin in 48 hours. As the session ended and the representatives began filing out, Helen grabbed Jake's arm. Are you insane? 3 squadrons means at least 30 ships. The Vengeance can't possibly win against those odds. Jake looked back at the alien representatives, many of whom were already making calls to their fleets. They were so confident in their victory that they weren't even being subtle about their preparations. Maybe, Jake said quietly, but they're about to learn something about humans that they've never understood. Sometimes the biggest mistake you can make is underestimating someone you think is weak. Back on the Vengeance, Captain Phillips was already receiving reports from human colonies throughout the sector. Alien fleets were indeed moving into position, using the war game as cover for what looked suspiciously like preparation for invasion. The trap was set, but Jake was beginning to wonder which side was really walking into it. The Vengeance's engine room hummed with activity, as Chief Engineer Katie Brooks supervised the final modifications to their weapon systems. 24 hours remained before the war games began, and every minute counted. Her engineering team worked in shifts around the clock, installing equipment that officially didn't exist. "How are we looking, Katie?" asked Captain Phillips as he entered the engine room. The space was cramped and noisy, filled with pipes, cables, and machinery that looked primitive compared to alien technology. But appearances could be deceiving. "Better than expected," Katie replied, wiping grease from her hands. The new missile warheads are loaded and tested. The railgun modifications are complete, and the engine upgrades should give us capabilities that alien sensors won't detect until it's too late. The modifications were based on technology that Earth's scientists had developed in secret over the past decade. While aliens relied on energy-based weapons and exotic propulsion systems, humans had perfected kinetic weapons that operated on simple physics principles. A chunk of metal moving fast enough could penetrate almost any defense. Dr. Nicole Baker joined them, carrying a tablet filled with sensor data. I've been analyzing the alien patrol ships that arrived this morning. 36 vessels total, 12 from each faction. Their weapons are powerful, but they're designed to fight other energy-based systems. What about their defenses? Phillips asked. That's the interesting part, Nicole said. Their shields can deflect plasma bolts and laser beams with ease, but they're not optimized for kinetic impacts. It's like bringing a bulletproof vest to stop a baseball bat. Meanwhile, in the communications center, Lieutenant Turner was coordinating with intelligence assets throughout human space. The reports were troubling but not unexpected. Alien fleets had positioned themselves near every major human colony, claiming to conduct routine exercises during the war games. Sir, we're detecting massive fleet movements in the Centauri sector, Turner reported to Commander Morrison. At least 200 alien vessels have gathered near New Geneva. Similar formations are appearing near other colonies. Jake studied the tactical display showing alien positions throughout human space. The pattern was clear. The aliens weren't just planning to humiliate humanity in the war games. They were preparing for complete conquest. The moment the Vengeance was destroyed in the exercise, alien fleets would begin occupation of human worlds. Have you made contact with Admiral Carter? Jake asked. Yes, sir. Earth Command is implementing Plan Omega. All civilian populations are being evacuated to fortified positions. Military forces are being repositioned to defensive coordinates. Plan Omega was humanity's last resort, a coordinated defense against overwhelming alien attack. It assumed that humanity would be outnumbered by at least 10 to 1 and would have to rely on unconventional tactics to survive. Ambassador Rodriguez entered the communications center, her face grim. I've been monitoring alien diplomatic channels. They're not even hiding their intentions anymore. Once the war games are over, they plan to present the council with a fait accompli. Humanity relocated to frontier regions for their own protection. Protection from what? Jake asked. From the inevitable conflicts that will arise from their continued presence in strategic systems, Helen replied. It's a polite way of saying they plan to take our colonies whether we agree or not. The irony wasn't lost on Jake. The aliens claimed humans were too aggressive and warlike for galactic society, then planned to prove their point by attacking human colonies. It was the kind of circular logic that worked only when you had overwhelming military superiority. Chris Matthews looked up from his console. Sir, incoming transmission from the alien fleet commander. They want to discuss the rules of engagement for tomorrow's exercise. Put it through, Jake said. The holographic display activated, showing General Thok Vareem in what appeared to be the command center of a massive Korthak dreadnought. Behind him, Jake could see dozens of alien officers working at stations that looked more like art installations than military equipment. Commander Morrison, the general rumbled. I trust your vessel is prepared for tomorrow's demonstration? As prepared as we can be, Jake replied neutrally. Excellent. The rules are simple. Your single ship against our 3 patrol squadrons. The engagement begins when you enter the nebula's designated combat zone. Victory conditions are the complete destruction or surrender of opposing forces. No outside assistance is permitted, Jake nodded. Understood. Will there be observers? Naturally. Representatives from all council member species will monitor the engagement. The results will be broadcast throughout the galaxy as an educational demonstration of modern fleet tactics. The connection ended, leaving Jake staring at the empty holographic display. The aliens wanted an audience for humanity's defeat. They planned to use the war games as propaganda, showing other species what happened to those who challenged the established order. Sir, said Dr. Baker, there's something else you should know about the Helix Nebula. The gravitational anomalies there don't just interfere with sensors. They create navigation hazards that can trap ships or sling them into unexpected trajectories. The aliens know this? They chose the location specifically because it favors their type of technology. Energy-based propulsion systems can adjust quickly to changing conditions. Chemical rockets like ours are supposed to be too slow and clumsy to handle the gravitational fluctuations. Jake smiled grimly. The aliens had picked the battlefield thinking it would guarantee their victory. They assumed human technology was too primitive to handle the nebula's challenges. It was exactly the kind of overconfidence that Jake had been counting on. Katie, are the engine modifications ready? Ready and tested, sir. The aliens think they know how our propulsion works, but they've never seen a human ship with military-grade chemical rockets. We can achieve thrust vectors and acceleration curves that their computers won't expect. Nicole, what about sensor coverage in the nebula? Spotty at best. The gravitational distortions create blind spots that change constantly. A ship that knows how to use them could appear and disappear like a ghost. Jake gathered his senior officers around the tactical display. Here's what's going to happen. We enter the combat zone exactly as expected, slow, clumsy, and obviously outmatched. The aliens will position themselves for an easy kill, probably spreading out to surround us. He traced paths through the holographic representation of the nebula, but the moment we're out of direct sensor contact, we use the modifications to change our capabilities. Instead of trying to fight 36 ships at once, we pick them off in small groups while using the nebula's interference to mask our position. Sir, said Phillips, even with our advantages, those are still terrible odds. Yes, they are, Jake agreed. But the aliens are making one critical mistake. They think this is just a military exercise with no real consequences. They'll be cautious about damaging their ships too severely, because they expect to need them for the real war afterward. And we'll be fighting like our lives depend on it, Turner realized. Because they do, Jake confirmed, and because the lives of every human in the galaxy depend on what happens in that nebula tomorrow. As the crew made final preparations, alien ships continued arriving at the staging area. The alien fleet grew larger and more impressive by the hour, a demonstration of technological superiority that was meant to intimidate any species considering resistance. What the aliens didn't realize was that humans had already learned the most important lesson of galactic warfare. Sometimes the side that looks weakest is the one that's most dangerous. The Helix Nebula stretched before them like a glowing maze of gas and energy. Swirling clouds of cosmic dust created patches of brilliant color against the darkness of space, while gravitational anomalies bent light and matter in impossible directions. It was beautiful and deadly, the perfect arena for what the aliens expected to be humanity's final performance. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching the alien fleet take positions around the nebula's perimeter. 36 ships arranged themselves in a loose formation, their weapons powered and shields raised. Each vessel was sleek and deadly, representing thousands of years of advanced technology. Sir, we're receiving the final briefing from the exercise controllers, reported Lieutenant Turner. We have 15 minutes to enter the combat zone before the engagement begins. Jake nodded and opened a ship-wide communication channel. All hands, this is the commander. In a few minutes, we're going to enter that nebula and face odds that any sane person would call impossible. The aliens expect us to fight like humans have always fought, with courage, determination, and inevitably failure. He paused, looking around the bridge at his crew. These were good people, professionals who had volunteered for a mission they knew might be their last. They deserved to know the truth, but today we're going to show them something new. We're going to fight like humans who have learned from every defeat, adapted to every challenge, and refused to accept that bigger and more advanced always means better. Today we prove that humanity belongs among the stars, Captain. Phillips took his position at the tactical station while Chief Engineer Brooks monitored the modified engines from her post. Dr. Baker had her sensors focused on the nebula's gravitational patterns, looking for the blind spots and anomalies they would need to survive. All stations report ready, Phillips announced. Take us in, Jake ordered. The Vengeance moved forward on conventional chemical rockets, leaving a visible exhaust trail that the alien ships could easily track. The human vessel looked exactly like what it was supposed to be, a primitive warship outmatched by superior technology and overwhelming numbers. As they crossed into the nebula's outer edge, the gravitational distortions began affecting their sensors. The alien ships spread out to maintain visual contact, creating gaps in their formation exactly as Jake had predicted. Each faction stayed with their own vessels, reluctant to coordinate too closely with their traditional rivals. Gravitational interference is increasing, reported Dr. Baker. Sensor resolution dropping to 60% and falling. The alien fleet commander's voice crackled over the communication system, distorted by the nebula's energies. Human vessel, you have entered the combat zone. The exercise has begun. May your death serve as an example to others. Charming, muttered Brooks from her station. Jake opened a response channel. We understand. Beginning defensive maneuvers now. The Vengeance continued deeper into the nebula, apparently trying to use the gas clouds as cover while the alien ships closed in from multiple directions. To external observers, it looked like a desperate attempt to delay the inevitable. Sir, sensor coverage is down to 30%, Baker reported. The aliens are having trouble tracking us through the interference. Perfect. Katie, how are our engines? Modified systems are online and ready. The aliens think they know our maximum acceleration, but we can push 50% harder than our published specifications. The question is whether our hull can take the stress. We're about to find out. All hands prepare for combat acceleration. The moment they disappeared into a particularly dense gas cloud, Brooks activated the engine modifications. The Vengeance's acceleration jumped dramatically as military-grade chemical rockets replaced the civilian-rated systems the aliens had observed. The ship shot forward like a bullet, using gravitational slingshots to achieve velocities that should have been impossible for human technology. Multiple contacts closing on our last known position, Turner reported. 12 ships converging from different vectors. They're expecting to find us drifting helplessly in the gas cloud. Instead, the Vengeance emerged from a completely different section of the nebula, behind a squadron of Vex-TIE interceptors that had spread out to search for the human ship. The alien vessels were fast and maneuverable, but they were designed for energy-based combat at long range. Targets acquired, announced Phillips. Range 2,000 kilometers and closing. Fire, Jake ordered. The Vengeance's railguns spoke with thunderous force, launching tungsten projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. The kinetic rounds punched through the Vex-TIE energy shields like they didn't exist, tearing through advanced hull materials and delicate internal systems. 3 alien ships died in the first salvo before their companions even realized they were under attack. The surviving Vex-TIE vessels spun around to return fire, their plasma weapons charging to full power, but the Vengeance was already gone, disappearing back into the nebula's chaotic energies before the alien weapons could lock on. The human ship used gravitational anomalies like stepping stones, bouncing between space-time distortions too quickly for the alien sensors to track. Enemy squadron is breaking formation, reported Turner. They're trying to spread out and box us in. Let them, Jake replied. The more they spread out, the easier it is to pick them off individually. The Vengeance emerged again, this time behind a group of Korthak heavy cruisers. These ships were built like flying fortresses with thick armor and massive weapons. They were designed to absorb tremendous punishment while dealing out devastating attacks. Unfortunately for the Korthak, their armor was designed to stop energy weapons. The experimental missiles that Dr. Baker had helped develop carried kinetic penetrators specifically designed to punch through heavy plating. The warheads detonated inside the alien ships, turning their own armor into deadly shrapnel. 2 Korthak vessels exploded in brilliant flashes while a third spun helplessly, its engines destroyed and its weapons offline. The surviving ships in the squadron turned to engage, but found themselves firing at empty space as the Vengeance vanished once again. Sir, the alien formations are starting to collapse, observed Phillips. They're pulling back to defensive positions instead of pursuing us. They're learning that chasing ghosts in a gravity maze isn't good tactics, Jake replied. But they still think they can outlast us. Time to prove them wrong. The Vengeance's next target was a mixed formation of Zephyrian crystal ships. These vessels relied on advanced energy shields and exotic weapons that could restructure matter at the molecular level. They were beautiful, deadly, and completely unprepared for what happened next. Brooks pushed the engines beyond their rated specifications, using gravitational assist from the nebula's anomalies to achieve attack velocities that stressed the ship's hull. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as structural supports groaned under the acceleration. But the modifications held. The human ship came out of the nebula's heart like a cannonball, its railguns firing continuously while missile launchers added to the barrage. The Zephyrian shields, designed to deflect exotic energy attacks, offered no protection against simple kinetic force applied at extreme velocity. Crystal hulls shattered like glass as tungsten rounds punched through them. Energy systems overloaded and exploded as missiles delivered electromagnetic pulses that the alien computers couldn't filter. 3 more ships died in seconds, their beautiful forms reduced to glittering debris. Enemy fleet is in full retreat, announced Turner. Remaining ships are pulling back to the nebula's edge. Jake studied the tactical display. In less than 20 minutes, the Vengeance had destroyed or disabled half the alien fleet, using tactics that their computers couldn't predict or counter. The surviving ships were trying to regroup, but their formation was broken and their confidence shattered. "Sir," said Dr. Baker, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups from the remaining ships. They're charging their main weapons to maximum power. They're going to try one massive coordinated attack," Phillips realized. "Everything they have left all at once," Jake nodded. The aliens had finally realized that individual squadrons couldn't handle the human ship. Now they were concentrating their remaining forces for a desperate final assault. It was tactically sound, but it also gave Jake exactly the opportunity he had been waiting for. "All stations, prepare for final engagement." "Katie, I need everything the engines can give us." "Nicole, plot us a course that uses every gravitational anomaly in this nebula." "Ryan, target their command ship." The remaining alien vessels formed a tight formation at the nebula's edge, their weapons glowing with barely contained energy. It was an impressive sight. 18 ships representing the best technology 3 advanced civilizations could produce. "Sir," said Turner quietly, "if we attack that formation head-on even with our advantages—" "I know," Jake replied. "But we're not going to attack it head-on. We're going to do something that their tactical computers will never see coming." The Vengeance began its final approach, accelerating directly toward the alien formation as if planning a suicidal charge. To the aliens, it must have looked like the desperate last act of a defeated enemy. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The alien fleet waited at the nebula's edge like a wall of death. 18 ships arranged themselves in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready to obliterate the approaching human vessel. Energy readings spiked across the electromagnetic spectrum as plasma cannons, particle beams, and exotic matter disruptors prepared to fire. Commander Jake Morrison watched the tactical display as the Vengeance accelerated toward what appeared to be certain destruction. The alien ships were positioned exactly where he wanted them, concentrated in a tight formation that maximized their firepower but limited their maneuverability. "Range 40,000 kilometers in closing," reported Captain Phillips. "All enemy weapons are locked onto us." "Sir, they're going to fire the moment we're in optimal range," warned Lieutenant Turner. "That's enough concentrated firepower to vaporize a small moon." Jake studied the gravitational sensor readings that Dr. Baker was feeding to his display. The nebula's most dangerous anomaly was directly behind the alien formation, a collapsed star fragment that created space-time distortions powerful enough to tear apart unprotected vessels. The aliens had positioned themselves carefully to avoid its influence while maintaining firing positions. "Katie, status on the engines?" Chief Engineer Brooks checked her readings. "Structural integrity is holding, but barely. One more high-stress maneuver and we might lose hull cohesion." "We only need one more," Jake replied. "Nicole, confirm the gravitational calculations." Dr. Baker's fingers flew over her console. "Confirmed, sir. The slingshot trajectory will work, but the timing has to be perfect. We'll have a window of less than 3 seconds. Ryan, target selection?" "The command ship is dead center of their formation. If we can take it out, the others will lose coordination." Jake opened a channel to the alien fleet commander. "General Thokvarim, this is Commander Morrison. Do you want to discuss surrender terms?" The Korthak's laughter boomed across the communication system. "Surrender? Human, you are outnumbered 18-1 by ships that represent the finest military technology in the galaxy. Your primitive vessel cannot even penetrate our shields." "Maybe not," Jake admitted. "But you're about to learn something important about human military doctrine." "And what is that?" "We don't fight fair." Jake cut the communication and turned to his crew. "All hands, brace for emergency acceleration. This is going to hurt." The Vengeance suddenly changed course, diving toward the collapsed star fragment that the aliens had been carefully avoiding. Warning alarms screamed across alien bridges as sensor operators tried to understand what the human ship was doing. "They're heading for the gravitational anomaly," reported a vexed high tactical officer to his commander. "Their navigation systems must have failed." Or they prefer suicide to defeat, replied the vexed TIE captain. Let them go. The gravity well will tear their ship apart more efficiently than our weapons. But Jake wasn't planning suicide. As the Vengeance approached the anomaly's event horizon, Brooks fired the engines at maximum thrust while Baker calculated the precise moment for gravitational release. The ship whipped around the collapsed star like a stone from a slingshot, using the massive gravitational field to achieve velocities that should have been impossible. The alien fleet watched in amazement as the human vessel shot out from behind the anomaly at nearly 10% the speed of light. Instead of approaching from the front where all their weapons were aimed, the Vengeance came at them from directly behind at a velocity that made evasive maneuvers impossible. Impossible, whispered the Zephyrian fleet commander as his sensors registered the human ship's approach vector. No chemical propulsion system can achieve those velocities. Unless you use a gravity well as an engine, Jake muttered as the alien formation grew rapidly larger on his display. The Vengeance's railguns fired continuously as it tore through the alien formation from behind. Tungsten projectiles moving at relativistic speeds punched through energy shields and exotic armor like they were made of paper. The kinetic energy released by each impact was equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. The Korthak command ship, massive and heavily armored, took 3 direct hits to its reactor section. The resulting explosion lit up the nebula like a small star, taking 2 nearby vessels with it in the blast. General Thakvarim's final transmission was a roar of rage that cut off abruptly as his ship disintegrated. Vex TIE interceptors tried to turn and engage, but their energy-based propulsion systems couldn't match the Vengeance's kinetic momentum. The human ship was moving too fast and hitting too hard for their defensive systems to compensate. Ships that had seemed untouchable minutes earlier now exploded like fireworks as human weapons found their marks. The Zephyrian crystal vessels attempted to form a defensive wall, their exotic shields linking together to create a barrier that could theoretically stop any attack. But the barrier was designed for energy weapons, not for a steel-hulled battleship moving at significant fractions of light speed. The Vengeance punched through the linked shields like they didn't exist, its reinforced hull taking damage but holding together long enough to deliver devastating close-range fire. Crystal hulls shattered in cascades of light as the beautiful alien ships died around their killer. Enemy formation is completely destroyed, reported Phillips, his voice filled with amazement. All 18 ships eliminated or disabled. Jake slumped in his command chair as the adrenaline of combat began to fade. Around him, his crew looked equally stunned by what they had accomplished. The Vengeance hung motionless in space, its hull scarred and smoking but intact. "Sir, we're receiving communications from all over the galaxy," announced Turner. The engagement was broadcast live to every council member species. The aliens wanted everyone to see humanity's defeat. Instead, they saw something else entirely, Jake realized. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Alien fleets that had been positioning themselves to attack human colonies suddenly found excuses to withdraw. The council representatives who had mocked humanity's primitive technology now spoke respectfully of human, innovative tactical approaches and unexpected strategic capabilities. Admiral Lisa Carter's face appeared on the communication screen, her expression mixing relief with pride. "Outstanding work, Morrison. The alien fleets are pulling back from our colonies, and the Council has voted to officially recognize humanity's territorial claims. What about relocation to the frontier regions?" Jake asked. "No longer under consideration. It seems the other species have decided that humans might be worth having as neighbors after all." Ambassador Helen Rodriguez joined the conversation from Nexus Station. "The political situation has completely reversed. The 3 major factions are now competing to offer us favorable trade agreements and military partnerships. They're all terrified that we might align with their rivals." Jake looked around his damaged bridge at the crew that had made the impossible possible. They had faced overwhelming odds with inferior technology and emerged victorious through courage, creativity, and the kind of tactical thinking that only came from a species that had learned to fight for everything it possessed. "Sir," said Dr. Baker, "I'm getting requests from alien military academies. They want to study our battle tactics and weapons design. They're calling the engagement the most innovative naval action in recorded galactic history." "Let them study," Jake replied. "They might learn something useful." What they would learn was that technological superiority meant nothing without the wisdom to use it properly. The aliens had better ships, better weapons, and better shields, but they had forgotten how to think like warriors. They had become so dependent on their advanced technology that they couldn't adapt when faced with something completely different. Humans, on the other hand, had been fighting impossible battles for their entire history. They had learned to win through intelligence, determination, and the willingness to try tactics that more civilized species would never consider. The Vengeance limped back to Nexus Station under its own power, its crew already planning the modifications they would make for the next generation of human warships. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about underestimating the species from Earth. As Jake watched the alien ships move aside to clear a path for the returning human vessel, he smiled grimly. The aliens had wanted to put humanity in its proper place in galactic society. They had succeeded, though not in the way they had intended. Humanity's proper place, it turned out, was wherever humans decided to put themselves. And anyone who had a problem with that was welcome to discuss the matter with the human fleet. The discussions, Jake suspected, would be brief and decisive.